looking back now, I mean, are there major points you've taken away in being able to reflect a little bit longer and how you're starting to look into approaching the offseason?
Yeah, I think, bottom line is we didn't achieve our goals. And when you don't achieve your goals and you have a season that, wasn't successful, then you have to look at what needs to change going into the next year to make sure the next season you achieve your goals and you are successful. So that's the bottom line. So that process, started, like I said, immediately following the loss to Vancouver with our season ending, and that process will continue. We've had a week now to look at a lot of different things, have player meetings and look at analytics and, go through and dissect every single game and look at the roster and, have meetings with all the department heads and everything. And we'll continue to do those things. But bottom line is, like I said, we didn't achieve our goals. And when you don't achieve your goals, you have to look long and hard at everything, and you have to make changes. But I think it's also important when you go through that process to remind yourself of the reality, and like I tell you guys a lot after losses, a lot of times it seems like it's broken when it's not. And I'll say that after this season as well. It's not broken. And yet we didn't achieve what we needed to. And there were factors in that. There will be changes, for sure. But what I can guarantee is that we'll fix the issues and that we will achieve our goals next year. And a part of that will be making changes.
Caleb, during the offseason, what are some of the positions you feel are priorities that you want to go out and try and find guys or make sure that from the younger guys here that are practicing, what are the positions you feel are priorities?
Well, I think, again, when you look at the first thing you have to look at is the roster. And I said it, when you go back through each game, there were different lineups every game, almost every game. And I said it, the 3 times we settled on what I felt was a top lineup, we won all 3 games. And the rest of the time it was chopping and adding, and there were factors in that. We had injuries. The season ends, and then people forget the games and the injuries along the way, and that's the way it is. You don't get a pass out on that, which is why I said all year we won't get a pass out on it. We have to get the job done. But we clearly have talent in the core. But a lot of that talent wasn't in the lineup. So I think that's important to remember. While we have talent in the team, a lot of games that talent wasn't in the game. And look no further than the last 2 games, the most important games. You had 2 DPs, Valeriati out Wednesday, you have 2 leading scorers, and you had 2 DPs basically, and Ridgie and Char, your 2 best defenders out. And so, that is a factor, and, I can't lose sight of that. Other people might, but I can't. You have to remind yourself of that and look at that objectively. And but we clearly have talent in the core, but we need to make sure that talent is on the pitch. That's a key. And what I will say is we didn't have enough talent in several positions, because for me, talent isn't just with, the core 6-7 guys. It's making sure you have talent across the board in every position. And, we clearly weren't strong enough in 3 or 4 positions this year. And so those are the positions that we looked at. And we'll keep the talented core that we have. We'll hope that we're healthy with that core. And, I think if we make 3 or 4 adds in certain positions, key positions, with the core that we have, that will solve most of our issues, in all honesty. And there are other things that we'll reflect on and correct. But, again, the reality is we missed it by 1 win. And the reality is we know how to win, and we've won trophies. And, a lot of teams talking a lot about their body of work. Well, our body of work was we were the MLS Cup champions last year, and we know how to get the job done and win. It didn't happen this year. You know, whereas you look at 6 teams in the Western Conference, they haven't won a playoff game in 3 years. 6 teams in the Western Conference, you know. So these are all things that get lost a little bit, but like I said, bottom line business, we didn't get it done. We will make changes. The biggest thing is look at the roster and keeping our core healthy and adding 3 or 4 positions, and most of our issues will be solved with that alone.
Can you comment on which 3 or 4 positions you're targeting?
Yeah, absolutely. We need a couple wingers for sure, and that's no secret. We need a holding mid. We need center back, you know, and then we'll need some depth pieces as well. Because like I said at the end of last year, regardless of injuries and how things go, if your talent's not in there, your top guys, you got to have a depth and a bench, and you know, our bench didn't get the job done. So we need to, you know, bring some key depth in several positions, and we need to add 3 or 4 starters. And when you look at the other positions, we are good enough, but we need to make sure that those guys are healthy and in the lineup.
Your teams have always seemed to, you know, have a lot of guys that are bought in, great culture for the locker room. This year you did say there was some complacency at times, and there were a few off-field things, that behind-the-scenes things that we don't totally fully know about. Do you feel like there needs to be some corrections to the mentality, and how do you approach that?
A lot of it will be corrected just by, you know, not succeeding and now going into a year where we weren't the champions. Like I said, it's that 5% more hunger. That means, you know, 2 or 3 more wins, which would have meant we're in the playoffs. And that 5% extra hunger that the opponent has to beat the champions. And, you know, again, we missed it by 2 points. We missed it by one win. And, you know, you see other teams that make the playoffs, they got that extra win along the way. And again, that's where it'd be easy for me to say there's a lot wrong and, you know, it's broken and we have to make a lot of changes. That's the initial reaction, and that's not the truth. That's not the reality. Came down to the last day, we win that game. You know, we're in the playoffs. We're feeling a little bit better, but there still would be changes. There still would be reflections. So that one game for me doesn't tell me anything other than the fact that we didn't get in and we didn't get the job done ultimately. But that one game, you know, for me, I'm not going to overreact on one game. You saw Dallas' Supporter Shield winners just lost 3-0. So, you know, are they broken because they lost 3-0? Absolutely not. So, I mean, these are all things that, you know, when you have a steady hand in leading clubs over a long time, you don't panic, you don't overreact, but absolutely, we need to add 3 or 4 players to our roster. We need to stay healthy, and we need that extra 5% of hunger that maybe was lacking in some games, not all games, but in some games. And that usually means in this league, in the Western Conference, the difference between getting in the playoffs or not. And in our case, the not.
So Caleb, what does the off-season look like for you? What's going to be the process? You obviously are still training for a couple more weeks, but then are you going to be off scouting? What are your plans?
Yeah, so again, the work began after the loss. You know, we've not had a day off, and you know, we don't deserve a day off. We have to keep working here and to make these corrections. And you know, in some ways, when you fall short, you know, I think you really get better more than ever, because you evaluate things a little bit more thoroughly than maybe some of the others that, you know, win one more game, you know. So I think when you look at 14 to 15, you saw that, and it's about, like I said, winning trophies. And even if you don't make it one year, for me, it's not good enough just to make it and losing the knockout, you know, first round, which has happened to a lot of clubs in the West, and you know, they float under the radar doing that, but ultimately it's about winning trophies and making a run when you get in. And if we can be more consistent in getting in, that gives us a chance to, because we've proven we're a very good team once we get in, you know, and we've been successful in winning games in the playoffs, you know. But the process started, and I've met with all but 5 players. Some of those meetings were players won't be coming back, although we won't announce that yet. But eventually, some of those meetings were, you will be coming back, but this needs to be better. You know, we're having meetings with, like I said, every department head. You know, our staff, the technical staff, analyzing everything, sports science staff, recruitment team, which is going to be massively important. And then me, Gavin, Merritt, you know, we sit down and we make decisions on who do we need to add, what's the budget, obviously, in those positions, based on who's in and out. And I honestly, as much as everybody wants to make it into a lot more, you know, if we add 3 or 4 positions, we'll be where we need to be.
Anything else? Cool. Thanks.
All right, guys, thanks a lot.